Right, a very warm welcome to all those joining online and those joining to see the recording afterwards for our training session, our online hub event as a partners network. And we are really thrilled today to have Richard Thornbury back with us, who's going to be overseeing the presentation and the time together this afternoon, and hopefully giving some time for questions and answers at the end. Richard, I'll pass straight over to you.
So I'm here to talk to you about butterflies and butterfly identification and recording. And I feel like I dodged a bit of a bullet last time round not doing the moths, because there's only 57 species of butterfly in the UK, and there's well over 2,500 moths that we know of so far. So I've got the kind of easier task this afternoon. The main thing I want to focus on is talking about the big butterfly count and trying to encourage partners to get involved with that as a kind of spur to get people started with recording, with using iRecord in particular, and recording butterflies as a good starting point. And I also wanted to spend some time looking at iRecord, thinking, I'll show you how you can set up a transect on iRecord that will help you with your recording going forwards. So I'm not going to do loads and loads of looking at actual butterfly identification, because the ones that you need to record for the big butterfly count are actually fairly straightforward to identify. But we'll have a quick look at that. So the reason for these meetings at the start of our sort of prayer meetings is a number of things. One is to give some information about some of the Target 25, which is something we've been doing, but the other thing is kind of just act as a bit of a focus for the network for the coming weeks, something for us to kind of focus on with sharing, really, and trying to breathe a bit of life and community into our network. So we want to have it as a bit of a focus now until the next session in about a month's time, and encourage partners to kind of share photos and sightings and stories and questions and things like that to do with butterflies. So if whatever channel you use to do that, whether it's the forum or it's the WhatsApp group, or I think there's still a Facebook group, although I don't think it's been on it for a while, but I'd encourage everybody, just whatever photos you have, whatever sightings you have, if you have good anecdotes, stories, questions, challenges with identification and so on, for the next few weeks we'll focus on that, which is nice to have something to kind of focus around. And the other thing is to try and encourage partners to record these things, which is really useful for a Rocha to be able to tell a story, the bigger story of the impact that we're having. We might know the impact we're having locally, but to be able to pull that together and tell that bigger story to the outside world is really, really important. People say, what does the Partners in Action Network do? And I can say all of the soft things that we do, which is actually the really important stuff, the ways we support each other and hold each other up and pray for each other. But it's really nice to have some numbers to crunch and some lists of species. So we want to encourage you with recording. And one way we want to try and get people to do that is just to piggyback on some of the big citizen science schemes, like the Big Butterfly Count, which is run by Butterfly Conservation. And the reason for that is because they're set up to be accessible. They're easy, they're straightforward, there's good, well-established methodology, there's lots of resources out there, and it's also really nice to feel that you're part of something that's really having a difference. So when you take part in one of these big surveys, you know you're contributing to a really large data set that can be used in all kinds of ways. And this is the kind of data that goes into the kind of state of nature reports and things like that. So it's making an important contribution, but it's very accessible. So yeah, we want to try and encourage as many partners as possible to take part in this Big Butterfly Count, which is run by Butterfly Conservation. It's run from the 12th of July to the 4th of August, and it's really quite simple to do, because as I say, they're only asking you to record, I think it's 20 common species of butterfly. Well, no, I think it's 15 or 16 butterflies and a handful of day-flying moths, which, if I can share my screen with you all. Oh, hang on, I haven't got anything to share. Let me open it. Try again. This one. Here we go. So these are the species that are asking people to record. They're all fairly common, familiar species that are well distributed around the country, and that's a big part of the point. They want it to be things that lots of people can find, and to produce a big data set that's actually meaningful. So they're all fairly straightforward species to identify, I would say. The ones that catch people out are the whites, so the large white and small white, and the green-veined white. They can be tricky. Obviously, the large white is larger, the small white's smaller. The large white has much darker patches on the wing, but they are quite hard to tell apart. And then from the underside, you can see the small white has the dot, large white not. And the green-veined white, well, it's got green veins, but again, it's quite hard to tell on the fly. But the thing is just to go out there and have a look and familiarise yourself by doing it. Don't be shy to just go and have a go. And you'll be surprised how quickly you get an eye as to, oh, that's a green-veined white. And you won't necessarily be able to say why, but you'll just get the jizz, as they call it. The other ones that are quite difficult sometimes are the meadow brown and the gatekeeper. Where's that gatekeeper? It's sitting under the list of everybody's faces on my screen. I don't know if it is for you. Can you see that?
Yeah. You see it.
And again, yeah, they do look quite similar, but you can tell them apart because the gatekeeper tends to be smaller and is generally orange with some brown, whereas the meadow brown is bigger and is brown with some orange, which isn't that helpful when they're just flitting past. But again, if you go out and start looking, you'll get your eye in. The other important difference is the meadow brown is on the wing for a much longer period than the gatekeeper. So if you're going out now and looking and you're seeing things, they'll be meadow browns rather than gatekeepers. The gatekeepers come out a bit later and then they disappear, and the meadow browns are still knocking around looking rather beaten up and weather-worn. So if you start going out and trying to identify butterflies now, start setting up some transects, start some recording. As soon as we get some actual warm sunny weather, you'll familiarise yourself with the meadow brown, and when the gatekeepers come, you'll just notice that it looks different. I can't really be more helpful than that. I mean, they often point to the gatekeeper. It has within this black dot, it has 2 white dots that look like a pair of eyes, whereas the meadow brown just has 1. But the butterfly has to be sat on something still for you to be able to see that, which they don't always cooperate. But yeah, they're not difficult species to get the hang of, and that's all they want you to record. In terms of the methodology for the recording, there's two ways of doing this. Both of them just involve a 15-minute survey, so it's fairly easy to fit that into somewhere in a day or a week. Important is that you want it to be sunny and dry when you go out and do it. So hopefully by July that will be the case. So it's just 15 minutes, and you can either do it from a fixed position, so go pick yourself a nice buddleia bush or a nice flower border or a nice bit of wildflower meadow that you've got somewhere. It can be, right outside your office or really near to your house or wherever, and you spend 15 minutes looking at which butterflies come. If you're doing it in a fixed point, you record the largest number of each species that you've seen at a single time. So if you have 3 red admirals, and then 2 red admirals, and then 6 red admirals, and then 4 red admirals, you'd record 6, being the largest number that you'd seen at any one time. That's to avoid you sort of double counting. And then the other way of doing it is, again, for 15 minutes, is just to walk a transect. So pick yourself a route. You can start practicing it now. You'll start identifying it now. A route that will take you about 15 minutes to walk. Edges of habitat are quite good, particularly if you've got, say, like along a hedgerow or where you've got some tall herbage at the edge of some grass. Again, you want to make sure it's sunny at the time when you're going to go and do it. And if you're doing a transect, you just walk along your route and you count the total number of each species that you see, rather than the largest number at any given time. And you might double count some, but you probably won't, and it won't affect the data massively if you do. So there's two different ways of doing it. The other thing is, when we're recording, we all tend to rush off and record, oh, I've seen a Duke of Burgundy, or oh, I've seen a White Admiral, and you'll quickly run and record that. But actually, it's the common, everyday, mundane things are really important to record. And the other thing that's really important to record that nobody ever wants to record is when you don't see anything. But those records are also really important. So if you do a transect or you do a 15-minute look and you don't see anything, that information is really, really significant. It doesn't tell a good story, but it tells an important story. There's a number of ways that you can take part. You can do it online. There's an app that you can use from Butterfly Conservation, particularly for the big butterfly count, or they've actually got just a standard Butterfly Conservation app, which is actually iRecord Butterfly. So it's already, I don't think you can see that, can you? It's already using iRecord, and that's a really, really good app to download because it has a list of all of the species that you can access offline, with photographs and with identification tips, flight periods, habitat, a whole load of information on there. It's basically a complete identification book that you can download onto your phone and access for free, and you can use that to submit your records to iRecord, or you can just log on to iRecord and record them like that, which is what we would really like you to do if possible, but better to do it through the Big Butterfly Count than not at all. So next I want to talk about iRecord and show you how to set up a transect. But I just thought I'd stop there. If there are any questions about what we've already covered with the Big Butterfly Count, or any particular identification questions before we get into iRecord?
Richard, there's one question in the messaging section.
Is there?
Yeah, James.
I have a question. Sorry, I just messaged you, Regina. I have I'm planning to do this butterfly count. I've got multiple days where I've got school groups coming into our site. So I'm trying to work out how I can do it in a big way across the space. So would it be appropriate to kind of look at different areas across the site and then do a count for those areas, or
Yeah, absolutely.
the biggest one over multiple days? What's the best way to do it with lots of kids over, I don't know, maybe 5 times?
Either or. I mean, if it was me and I had a large number of children coming on a number of days, I would split them into groups of maybe 2 or 3 and assign each of them either a transect or a fixed point, and then repeat it over a number of days. You can submit records for the same fixed point or the same transect as many times as you like, and in fact doing that more often will give a more comprehensive picture of what's actually going on. So yeah, if it was me, I would say, okay, well, we've got a number of places around. I'm afraid I don't know your site, but you have a number of places around the garden or around a meadow, and split them up and get them to record separate points. Or if you've got enough people to accompany them on a transect, walk the transect. Does that help?
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Really helpful.
It's a great thing to do with children or with people who don't normally do recording. It's one of the ways I often try and kind of kickstart people at Hillfield, because we have a big turnover of people, and then we have people like Brother Hugh who just forget things from one year to the next. It's a really good, I say that because he's here. I'm not being mean behind his back. It's a really good way of getting people into it, because it's just so accessible and fairly straightforward. And there's a couple of species you can get mixed up on, but you can find ways around that relatively easily.
Can I respond? Richard, I was the most feeble of it all in being able to separate the whites, and I said a white fitted bar, and I can't tell the difference whether it was small or big. Can you give us some information about the timings? When you said the meadow browns and the gatekeepers had come at different times, can you make it easier to spot the whites? Otherwise, I just want to write down white.
No, and if you can't identify it to species, it's important that you don't misidentify and misrecord it, because that's.
So I ended up by saying there was no whites at all because I couldn't really sort them out. So
yeah.
There are lots of whites.
We'll work on that. We can improve that for you, Hugh.
We'll all work on this offline.
Yeah. With the gatekeepers and the meadow browns, they do overlap. It's not that they're not on the wing at the same time. They are, but the meadow browns come earlier and persist later, and the gatekeepers have a short window within that same time period where they're on the wing. So familiarise yourself with one, and then when the other turns up, you'll notice it's different.
Richard, am I right in saying that one of the confusion species on the Big Butterfly Count is actually young and female brimstone butterflies, which are regularly mistaken for whites as well?
Yeah, I should have said that as well for the green veined white. Let me go back to my picture. Oh no, I have to have it open first. I don't do all these Zoom meetings very often, unfortunate to say. Share my screen, this one, there we go. So this is the brimstone, and if you look at it when it's got its wing closed, it does look similar, particularly in the coloration, can be quite similar to the green veined white, and also, yeah, as you say, some of them are quite pale. The big clue there is that this wing shape is quite a distinctive shape on the brimstone, and also it's got this dot, and the green veined white doesn't. I guess you could confuse it with some of the other whites, but the other whites are white, and the brimstone will always be slightly yellowy.
Green vein is much smaller too.
Hmm. And yeah, again, there's something about the flight period where the brimstones come very early, and then they're on the wing, and then they have another brood that emerges, and they're on the wing that bit later on. So if you're seeing them in the middle part, then they're less likely to be a brimstone and more likely to be a green veined white or some other white.
May I ask, is the iRecord Butterflies a free app?
Yes, it's free, and as is the whole of iRecord, which is the primary platform that Partners in Action are trying to encourage each other to record on. So yeah, if you can submit your records on iRecord proper, that would be really, really good. But the iRecord Butterflies app from Butterfly Conservation has this really fantastic guide to a species, which I was going to show you, but you're just getting a glare off of my screen. But it would, for example, show you all of the flight periods, and you'll have multiple photographs, and it will tell you identification tips to tell them apart from other species and so on. So it's a really, really useful app.
Can I ask a question about the 15-minute walkabout? If
Yes.
you set up, if you do a route that you walk for 15 minutes, well, there are no butterflies there, and you think, okay, this is a 15-minute walk. Then you go out on a hot sunny day, there's hopefully a load of butterflies there, and you only walk half of the 15-minute lap because you're stopping and trying to gather the data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to work out how does that. You're just walking for 15 minutes. It doesn't matter how far, how short you get. And one day there might be 3 butterflies and you're going to go another 100, 500 meters or something. Then another day.
You want to try and figure out a transect that takes you 15 minutes to walk whilst looking for butterflies. So it's not fast marching how quickly you can walk, how far you can walk in 15 minutes. So walk a transect and take your time and have a look what's around you as you're doing it. And then it will take you about that amount of time to walk it and record butterflies. But it doesn't matter too much, no, because it's such a big data set that they're collecting.
Okay, thanks.
But when we look at, so we'll move on to that now probably, because otherwise we won't have time. But if you're setting up a transect that you're going to record regularly for iRecord, then I would encourage you to walk the whole transect and try to do it for the same amount of time each time, which you can figure out as you do it. So if once you've done it a few times, you'll say, well, actually, in order to do that properly, I need to spend 20 minutes or half an hour or something. That would be better longer term. But if you're just contributing to the big butterfly count, it's such a big data set that they just stick to their rules, which are 15 minutes. So if we look at iRecord, I don't know how many of you who are in the room use iRecord. How many of you are using it at the moment? A few of you. Okay, good. And those that are using it, do you have an activity set up for your site?
Didn't know you could.
Okay, maybe I should look at that. Well, I'll stick with what I wanted to show you, but if people would like to see how to set up an activity for your site, which allows you to actually define compartments, parcels, fields, habitat types, whatever you would like to set it up by, and then you can attribute records to a particular field, a particular woodland, and so on. That's quite, it's quite a useful tool, because then you can start extracting data for your site at the field level. But if I just stick with what I wanted to show you, and maybe we have to do a separate session one time looking at iRecord, how to set up an activity and how to sort of start drawing your polygons and things on, that might be a good thing. But I'm not geared up to do that. So let me just share my screen, and I'll just go as if you have logged on to iRecord. That would be your landing page when you come onto iRecord. I've got to move all this clutter out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Can I shrink that? So your face is covering everything up. Yes. No, I can't see. Okay. Sorry, things are covered up by the Zoom stuff. So that's your iRecord landing page. And if you have an activity set up, you can click on activities and you can find your activities. You can search for other people's activities. So you can look here at Fox Earth Meadows have an activity set up. This is our activity, the Highstoy Conservation Cluster. That's our local group of landowners, land managers who are working together for conservation, including the Friary and other people. And you want this button here, Manage Activity Sites. Here you are. This will show you the kind of thing you can do. So these are our sites that are mapped for the cluster. So I think we're going to have another session looking at how you can do this, because it's actually really useful, because I can record things against the camping field, and then I can start to analyse the data we've got against all of these different compartments. Grey, green, brown, end over copies. So you can kind of flick through and see what's been cited in those, and it doesn't only bring out your records; it will bring out any records that the general public have attributed to that location as well, which is really useful. Sometimes somebody else adds something, you go, "Oh, I didn't see that," but someone else has spotted it, and iRecord will automatically know it belongs to that area. So if you have an activity set up, to make a transect, similar to making a polygon, you just do enter the details of a new site. You have to give a name. Let's call it transect. You then have to give a grid reference, which, let's see if we can find the Friary relatively easily. Nope. Hang on a minute. That's miles away. Bear with me. There we go. That's the Friary. Okay. You have to give it a grid reference, which can be as big or as small as you like. If you click in that box, you'll get this little square, and you basically just assign that to somewhere that you think is near where you want to ascribe the transect. So if we were going to do a transect around this field, we'll just put it somewhere in that field, and it will ascribe the data to that location. You then, on the map, you've got these tools here. So this is the one that would allow you to draw a polygon. If you wanted to draw a shape, say you wanted to delimit that woodland, you would draw around it with that tool. But to do a transect, you just pick the line, and we'd say, okay, I want to walk a transect up the edge of that field, and I'm going to go across the bottom of the wood, and I'm going to come back down this way. And that's it. That's all you've got to do, and then you can submit it. And it will save it. Okay, that now exists as a transect. Now, when I go to add my records, I go to record. I could say I've walked a transect. I want to enter a list of records for that transect. I want to add it to the Highstoy Conservation Cluster. Yes, please. When did I see it? I saw it today. And then where was it? This is the, yeah, it was yesterday. Where was it? So here you can type in any of your named parcels. So if we type in now, I called it transect. Ah, there it is. Click on that one, and it now brings up the transect. And then you've got to give it a grid reference again. So just click wherever, somewhere vaguely relevant, that will do, to ascribe it to. And then you would just go back to your list of records and start adding records as you normally would. So perhaps we saw 3 red admirals, and you can select that there were adults on the wing, for example. And maybe we saw Duke of Burgundy. Let's say we saw 100 of those. Okay, and then you just submit your records as usual, and then it will actually be ascribed against that transect, which then means if you keep repeating that transect throughout the season and throughout the years, you'll be able to go back and analyse the data that you've recorded against that transect. And as I say, if you want to just set up a field or a compartment, it's basically the same, but instead of picking that line to draw a transect, you just pick the shape drawer and draw around the outline of your shape. Are there any questions on that beyond the big question of how do you set up an activity, which we don't have time to address? But no.
Useful.
Good. So I think what we need is a bit of a challenge now for the coming month until the next time we meet, to try and get people to try and share some nice I mean, photographs would be lovely. It's always nice to see a photograph of different species, but even just sightings, or if you've been out and done a transect, or you've had to go setting up iRecord and got really frustrated, just share that either as a story, or if you've got a question how to actually do it. Yeah, and we'll just try and breathe a bit of life into our partnership, that we have points of contact with each other in between these meetings. Does that sound good? And Regina will give a prize or something. What will you send?
So if anybody would like to be on the WhatsApp group and if not on it yet, send me your mobile number, because that's quite a nice way to share stuff with each other. So just send me an email with your number. Yeah. And Andy is going to name the place.
A day's bird watching with Richard Tilmer at Hillfield Forest.
It went back to you.
Richard, thank you. That was a great introduction on butterflies. And the challenge with all of these training events is in half an hour, you can only achieve so much. But it's a good flag up that it's been a little while since we've run training on iRecord. And so absolutely, yes, I think we need to do a couple of training sessions on iRecord to bring people up to speed who've done it and need a refresher, and those who are relatively new to the network who have yet to have a look at it properly. So good flag, thank you. And for those online, I hope you find this helpful. And as always, if you have questions, then please do send them through to Regina or myself, and we'll make sure that the relevant questions get to Richard if we can't answer them ourselves. And we'll look forward to the next one in a month's time. Thanks all.
Thank you.